Developing right now on Morning News Now, escalation at sea. This morning, Iran vowing to retaliate after an American sub sank an Iranian Navy ship in the first torpedo attack by the U.S. since World War II. And on land, the U.S. and Israel continuing the barrage of strikes across Tehran, where the group known as the Assembly of Experts works to select the next supreme leader. Meanwhile, in Washington, lawmakers failing to pass legislation limiting President Trump's war powers as the president doubles down on his decision to attack.
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. Their missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launchers are being wiped out. It's really a nation that was out of control, and they would have used it on us if we let them, if we waited any longer.
Now, the war widening into NATO territory after Iran targets Turkey as the death toll mounts across the Middle East. We will bring you the latest. Also this morning, Attorney General Pam Bondi subpoenaed over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation after the Justice Department acknowledged tens of thousands of files are offline. Plus, severe storms stretching from the south to the northeast, and it could mean wet weather for several days. Angie's here tracking the conditions and the dangers so you can plan ahead. And stop, rewind. We'll show you the new trend bringing us back to the old days when a fun night in meant popping in a VHS tape or a DVD. Joe is going to bring us that story a little later. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. We appreciate you starting your Thursday morning with us. Joe's off today. We're going to begin this hour with the ongoing war in the Middle East, of course. The U.S. is accelerating its attacks against Iran. New video shows the moment the U.S. military says it struck an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean yesterday. It is the first time a U.S. torpedo struck a vessel in combat since World War II. It's one of 20 ships the U.S. military says it has struck or sunk since the war began. Now, we learned that yesterday during a press conference from top Pentagon officials who projected confidence in the progress of this war. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says American attacks will continue. He said the U.S. and Israel are nearing complete control of Iranian airspace, allowing forces to deliver, quote, death and destruction all day long. Now, Iran's Red Crescent Society says nearly 1,000 people have been killed by Israeli and American strikes. Meanwhile, Iran continues to retaliate with escalating drone strikes across the Persian Gulf. American citizens stuck in the region are still on high alert, of course, as they urgently try to get home, all as Iran targets U.S. facilities. We clearly have a lot to get to this morning. We have a team of correspondents and analysts standing by to break it all down with us. We are going to begin with NBC News International correspondent Matt Bradley and reporter Matt Bodner for the very latest. Good morning to both of you. Matt Bradley, I will start with you in Tel Aviv. Our viewers might remember, if they were with us yesterday, when you joined us, we could hear air raid sirens in the background. At one point, you actually did evacuate to a shelter while we were speaking. But we also did hear yesterday in this update from officials that Iran's strike back capabilities and just the frequency has significantly decreased. Tell us what we know, though, and what you're experiencing firsthand in terms of Iran's retaliatory strikes over the last 24 hours. Who's been hit the hardest?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we have been hearing from the Israelis that, yes, the frequency, the tempo of these ballistic missile salvos has decreased, and the number of missiles has decreased as well. But I have to tell you, over the past day or two, there really does seem to have been quite a few missile alerts and sirens that we've been hearing, sending lots of people rushing to the very shelter that I am in now. You know, we heard one just a couple of minutes ago. But at the same time, we're also hearing that the death toll has stood at 10 for several days now. There have been no deaths here in Israel from those Iranian missile strikes or those now from Hezbollah. There have been no injuries in the last just about 24 hours, though we don't know what happened just right now. Everything could change once we get more information. But the fact is that what we've been hearing from the IDF is that all of these Iranian projectiles and almost all of these missiles being fired from Hezbollah in Lebanon have been swatted out of the sky. Now, as such, yesterday we are hearing that Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv has started to accept flights about once every hour. The idea is that those flights will be accepted once every hour for the first 24 hours, and then it will go to 2 every hour. And starting on the weekend, we're going to start hearing about flights taking off from Ben Gurion Airport, Israel's main airport. Now, the Israeli officials have lowered their level of alert here in Israel, so that means that now people can go to work as long as their place of work has access to a safe room like the one I'm standing in now. But schools will remain closed. Now, I got to tell you, one interesting thing we've been hearing is that actually the number of injuries that have been reported here in Israel, actually most of them, about 2/3 of them, have been from people rushing to get to the shelters rather than actually being injured by those Iranian ballistic missiles.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you for staying safe. Stay with us, Matt Bodner. I'm going to bring you in here for the latest on the strikes against Iran. So we saw that video, and I explained this is really sort of a remarkable moment. An Iranian ship torpedoed by the U.S. military, something that has not happened in decades. Walk us through this particular mission and what other Iranian targets the U.S. is focusing on and the success that we're hearing from officials they say they're finding.
Thanks, Savannah. Well, Hegg said that his briefing yesterday highlighted that Iran's Navy is one of the major targets of this operation. Of course, the entire Iranian military is the target. They said they've sunk or destroyed or otherwise disabled around 20 Iranian vessels. That includes one submarine. That's all so far. Hegg also mentioned that a U.S. submarine tracked down an Iranian destroyer in the Indian Ocean and sunk her. CENTCOM then released a video apparently recorded from the periscope of that U.S. submarine showing a destroyer-sized vessel lifted out of the water by a massive explosion on her stern quarter. The Pentagon has not identified the ship in the video, but it does resemble the same class of vessel as the IRIS Dina. That's an Iranian ship. The Sri Lankan Coast Guard said that it had responded to a distress call from the Dina, located 25 miles off their southern coast. The Coast Guard said they found 80 bodies and rescued 32 crew members. And Iran's foreign minister has since responded on X, saying that the United States had, quote, perpetrated an atrocity at sea, and said that the Dina was a guest of the Indian Navy. The sinking of the Dina, located some 2,000 miles away from Iran, underscores the ever-expanding scope of what was originally billed as a focused special military operation within Iran. This is partially due to the scope of Iran's counterstrikes across the region. The U.S. at this stage says it's still focused on destroying Iran's ability to resist. So that means that in addition to the goal of the total destruction of the Iranian Navy, the American operation continues to eat away at air defenses and launch sites for missiles and drones.
Yeah, we're going to talk more, Matt Bodner, in just a moment about sort of where we think this is going and what's being signaled from officials. But Matt Bradley, let's talk about the thousands of Americans that are stranded in the Middle East as this is all unfolding. We have had many on our show. We're going to speak with more today. There's these mixed messages, right? It's like get out if you can, this list of countries that they're telling Americans they want them to evacuate from without any plans really in place, without assistance, and certainly without commercial flights from airports, as you laid out for us a moment ago. Is there anything new here? Are there plans now to get them out safely? How can they try to stay safe while they are there?
Well, the U.S. government is saying that they have evacuated more than 10,000 Americans from the Middle East so far. But here in Israel, we've seen a trickle of people leaving by land. We went to a bus station yesterday here in Tel Aviv where we saw a bunch of Americans calmly getting on the bus, loading their luggage. They were taking about a 5-hour trip all the way down to the Egyptian border, where they were all planning on crossing over into the Egyptian city of Taba, where they're planning on taking regional airports or moving on to Sharm el-Sheikh. Time-consuming, expensive efforts to try to get out. And they said that they hadn't really heard much from the U.S. government. Some of them are complaining about this, but here in Israel, the journey really isn't that arduous. If it is, inconvenient. So there were a lot of folks who we spoke with who said, look, it would have been nice if the U.S. government had done a little bit more to prepare us for this moment before it happened.
Matt Bodner, yesterday we heard Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth say that the U.S., the quote, was just getting started. The Pentagon also spoke, as you said, to just this shifting strategy as it nears this one-week mark. We've heard quite a bit about expectation of an overwhelming number of strikes still to come. Lawmakers have been briefed on that as well. What can we expect?
Well, yesterday, Secretary Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, they claimed the U.S. and Israel already dominate the skies over Iran and that total air superiority was in sight. They talked about bombers operating ever more in the open. In terms of strategy, they said that they've been using a lot of the higher-end so-called standoff weapons, of which there's not an unlimited supply. There's been a lot of talk about that. General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said that U.S. forces are already transitioning away from those more expensive weapons, essentially to cheaper, more available bombs and missiles. that tend to be dropped or fired more directly at their targets. He also said the campaign would be working further inland as they run out of targets closer to the coasts and the border regions. That all said, across the administration, it seems we're seeing a bit of a change in rhetoric. All week we've been hearing this operation will take 4 to 5 weeks. Over the past day or so, administration officials have been hedging on that, hinting that this may take longer. Hegseth himself said yesterday it could go on for 8 weeks, though his point in that comment was that he didn't want to put a time limit on the operation. So it really is difficult to understand what we should be expecting going forward, but it is looking like it could be a long haul. Savannah?
All right, Matt Bodner, Matt Bradley, thank you both very much. For more on how President Trump made the decision to launch this war, let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. Thank you, as always, for being here. Yesterday, we did hear from the White House for the first time since this war began nearly a week ago in this particular format anyway. We heard from Press Secretary Karen Leavitt. Let's listen to a little bit of what she said. We'll talk after.
The president found that through these extensive, exhaustive, failed negotiations with Iran, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction. The president had a feeling, again, based on fact, that Iran was going to strike the United States, was going to strike our assets in the region, and he made a determination to launch Operation Epic Fury based on all of those reasons.
So, John, the phrase "a feeling based on fact." Walk us through the latest that we're hearing in terms of the reasoning that the White House and the Defense Department are laying out for this war at this time.
Good morning, Savannah. The White House and the Pentagon have to make the argument that Iran was going to strike first. Otherwise, there would be legal questions about the constitutionality of a war of aggression against Iran without congressional declaration of war or without an authorization of the use of force. So whether or not they had facts and evidence that Iran was going to attack the United States preemptively, and by the way, just for everyone's purposes, it's impossible to know for certain that something is going to happen in the future, but there must be an intelligence assessment, or they are suggesting that there is an intelligence assessment that Iran would have struck the United States, as Marco Rubio said, in retaliation for strikes that Israel was going to conduct in Iran. So that, that's the sort of predictive nature, the intelligence suggesting that the United States would have been struck by Iran preemptively. Again, we're not privy to that intelligence. In fact, Caroline Leavitt didn't say that there was evidence. She simply said that there was fact.
John, reporting from Axios yesterday is sort of adding to this picture. Tell us what that is in terms of what they're saying might be the reasoning for the timing on the president's part.
So what Axios reported was that there was a meeting, or a discussion, I should say, between Netanyahu and President Trump. And in it, Netanyahu said to President Trump, this is not this past Monday, but the one a week before, said to it that there was a rare opportunity to assassinate the Supreme Leader Khamenei and people around him, and President Trump thought that was too good to pass up. At least that's the reporting from Axios. So that's the reason for the timing, was that meeting that was disrupted by Israeli shelling.
John, also yesterday, the Republican-controlled Senate rejected a war powers resolution. This was aimed at restricting President Trump's ability to carry out further military action against Iran, or at least do so without consulting Congress. Was this strictly along party lines, or what happened here and what happens next on the Hill?
It was almost exactly along party lines. So all of the Democrats, minus one, voted to block the president's authority here. And one Republican voted to block the president's authority. That was Rand Paul of Kentucky. On the other side, Republicans lined up to preserve the president's ability to conduct this war with the support of John Fetterman, the Democrat from Pennsylvania. And Savannah, this is sort of an important moment here. From a legal standpoint, the United States Senate effectively saying that it's okay for the president to continue this war with Iran. It is not as powerful as a declaration of war, not as powerful as a use of force authorization, but nonetheless, the Senate having spoken now in favor of the Iran war, almost entirely along party lines, with Republicans backing the president and Democrats trying to block it.
All right, John Allen, thank you so much. Well, we are
decimated.
learning more about some of the U.S. troops who were killed in an Iranian strike over the weekend. Family and friends are now speaking out about their lives and their sacrifices they made for their country. NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kuby brings us all of these emotional tributes.
The strikes in Kuwait were fast and furious, one of them hitting where a group of American soldiers were stationed, killing 6. 20-year-old specialist Declan Cody's sister says she still doesn't believe her little brother is gone.
I just remember all of our conversations about what he was going to do when he came back. I just wish he could have known one more time that we all loved him because he was so amazing and kind.
Captain Cody Cork was the kind of leader a junior soldier hoped to have.
He cared about people. Hey, I'm not going to put soldiers in harm's way. That's what you look for in a commander.
Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens left his mark on everyone around him.
He is the kind of a person that's confident, but then respectful, easy to get along with right away.
And Sergeant First Class Nicola Moore was just 39 years old, the mother of 2, supposed to return home later this month. Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marsan and Major Jeffrey O'Brien were also killed when an Iranian drone got through the air defenses and hit the operations center where they were working. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs saluting their sacrifice.
To our wounded warriors and their loved ones, we will never forget your sacrifice. Our nation stands with you, and we are eternally grateful for your courage, your resiliency, your devotion to this mission and to our nation.
While Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth suggesting the attention to their sacrifice is political.
But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
The White House announcing President Trump will attend the dignified transfer ceremony at Dover Air Force Base when the fallen troops return home. Courtney Kuby, NBC News, Washington.
Well, in the Middle East, we are only starting to get a sense of the human cost of the war. In Lebanon, UNICEF said on Wednesday that at least 7 children had been killed and more than 38 were injured in just the past 24 hours. UNICEF reports nearly 60,000 people, including 18,000 children, had been newly displaced in Lebanon, in addition to the tens of thousands who had already been uprooted from their homes. This comes as more than 12,000 families have found refuge in over 300 shelters across Lebanon, dozens of which have now reached full capacity. Joining us now to shed some light on this situation in Lebanon, UNICEF Deputy Spokesperson Ricardo Pires. He joins us from Geneva. Ricardo, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. So this region, the southern Lebanon and the border between Lebanon and Israel, it is not new that it is a region filled with tension and often filled with military action, but it really sort of became more of a battleground in the Middle East just this week on Monday when Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militant group operating out of Lebanon, began firing on Israel. This is after the Ayatollah's death. In retaliation for that, Israel has since responded with strikes of its own and now even a ground operation, which is leading to a lot of this displacement. And UNICEF says children are really bearing the brunt of this escalating violence. How is this conflict impacting those kids and families?
Thanks for having me, Savannah. Good morning. As you mentioned, indeed, this is not new for children in the region, particularly in Lebanon. And the death toll is already mounting. You mentioned 8 children killed, 38 injured. That is heartbreaking for us to see again and again children paying the heaviest price in a conflict that they have no say or didn't ask for. Again, last year, or actually in 2024, children saw an escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, which impacted them, displaced them, uprooted them, made them lose their homes, family ones. Some of them lost their lives. And yet here we are again, asking for children to be protected and not be considered collateral damage in conflict. And when conflict breaks, it's not only their lives that are at risk and the protection issues that we're trying to tackle here, but they lose school, they lose access to school, they lose access to health services, they lose access to clean water, they're pushed away from their homes and they're displaced and uprooted and completely lost in fear and uncertainty. So again, it's heartbreaking and staggering that we are back to this situation and children are again at the forefront of this horror.
NBC News international correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian, one of our colleagues, she's on the ground in Beirut overnight and into this morning. She says Lebanon was struck with its most intense bombardment since Sunday night. As this war rages on and as that may continue to be the case, we may continue to wake up and say that, how is UNICEF responding?
So we know what to do. We've been in situations like this before. Unfortunately, UNICEF is prepared to respond when we have access and safety to do our work. And that's exactly what we're doing in Lebanon since Monday, since the escalation started. We have increased our emergency response across the country. We are deploying mobile health teams to make sure that children who are on the move have still access to basic health care, that they can still be checked by doctors if they have vaccinations that need to be taken, that they can access that health service, and also to make sure that families are protected, that there are 300 displacement sites right now in Lebanon, new displacement sites that have been put together just because of this latest escalation. So we're making sure that we are reaching those shelters and also providing psychosocial services to children who are, again, trying to recover from trauma from 2 years ago or a little bit less than that. And now they're facing conflict, bombs falling from the skies again, and not knowing what their future will look like in the weeks and months to come.
Ricardo, real quick, how can people help?
Look, we need money. UNICEF needs funding to be able to continue our response. We have $48 million US, an appeal of $48 million US that needs to be met, and right now is not yet 100% funded. So you can go on UNICEF USA and donate to UNICEF so we can continue our life-saving work in Lebanon and across the region.
Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us this morning and the important work you're doing.
Thank you.
This morning, gas prices are rising once again as this conflict expands. It was just over a week ago when President Trump actually took credit for lower gas prices during his State of the Union speech. Well, now we're seeing a spike across the country with really no idea when this war will end. And economists are warning that the rising crude oil prices could also drive up inflation again. For more on what to expect, let's bring in Matt McLean. He's a petroleum analyst at the app Gas Buddy, which tracks gas prices and helps find the best deal for consumers. Matt, good morning. So you've talked a lot this week about how we are seeing both this volatile crude oil market and then also wholesale gasoline price exchange. Walk us through kind of the differences there. Give us that breakdown and how markets impact what we're paying at the pump.
Well, obviously, whenever you have a conflict that's right in the Middle East and affecting multiple OPEC plus nations, you're going to have a crude oil spike. There's just really no way to avoid it, especially when you throw in the Strait of Hormuz and all the uncertainty there, where 20% of the world's oil supply happens to make its way through there on tankers on a daily basis. Once crude oil spikes, then you start to see the reactionary price point for wholesale gasoline. It really doesn't have a choice but to go up from that point because obviously gasoline made from crude oil at that particular point. We are seeing prices at about $3.25 a gallon today. They could rise to about $3.35 to $3.45 where things stand right now. Even potentially bigger story, diesel rising to $4.25, possibly as high as $4.65 nationwide. That would be the highest since April of 2024.
About a quarter of the world's oil passes through what we have been talking quite a bit about now. It's this area called the Strait of Hormuz, this waterway right off the coast of Iran. Tanker traffic there has now slowed to a crawl because of the threat that any ship that passes through there will be attacked by Iran. We've seen the national average of a price of gas jump more than a quarter per gallon in just a week. Is there any way to know where we might be, let's say, a month from now? If this keeps up, do you just continue to see those prices climb?
You know, here's the thing when it comes to ongoing conflicts. No one knows each day exactly how that conflict is going to play out until the day is over. So when it comes to looking a month, 6 weeks in advance, it's really unwise as an analyst to try to throw a dart at a dartboard and hopefully hit the bullseye. There are just simply too many scenarios at this particular point to know exactly what we think is going to happen. All we can genuinely hope for, especially for consumers at this point, is that we do get this conflict wrapped up much earlier and try to bring a little bit of stability to the price point of oil and gasoline. But right now, we are continuing that upward trajectory.
Finally, just give us any tips here, any ways that we can offset these prices.
Best thing that we can do, lighten up the speed that we drive down the interstate. We're Americans. Most of us have a tendency to speed, especially when we're on the freeway, the interstates. The most impact you can have, pull back on your speed. Believe it or not, you would be very surprised at the fuel mileage increase that you'll get from that. Also, make sure your vehicle is roadworthy. We also have an app, Gas Buddy. We've even partnered with a lot of different partners that will allow for gas discounts as well. A lot of Americans are price sensitive. We've dealt with a lot of inflation over the last few years, so I fully understand and empathize that saving money is a very, very important thing right now for many American families.
All right, just slow down, guys. Matt McLean, thanks so much. Let's get you some weather now. It's time to keep those umbrellas out. Storms are expected for the rest of the week. We've got all your details with your Morning News Now weather and Angie Lastman here in studio. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. Happy to report I brought my umbrella this morning because of all of this. You can see that moisture moving across parts of the Northeast, stretching back as far as places like Missouri. And really, we've already got some of these alerts up for how heavy that rain is and the flooding issue that is likely to occur here as the morning goes on. 9 million people under these flood alerts. In places like Paducah, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, you're in and out of the heavy rain. There's some lightning associated with that as well. And that's going to make the early morning commute a little tricky for that region. Here's one of the spots that we're going to be watching through the day today. I say one of them because we've also got the chance for some severe weather here. I'll show you that here in a moment. But notice there's still a wintry mix in some of these spots farther to the north. So there will be some icing that we see, maybe some slippery spots on the commute and even into the later parts of today across New England. As we look ahead to tomorrow, this is your Friday. Notice there's still some of this kind of rain and a bit of wintry mix across parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes. We'll see widespread severe weather potential as we look to the parts of the South. Once again, I'll show you that here in a moment. And then by Saturday, more of this rain, and we've got heavy spots of that here, stretching anywhere from Texas to Missouri. But we will see some milder conditions up and down the East Coast when it comes to our temperatures. In the meantime, through tomorrow, here's the areas that I want you to watch to be slick on the roads. We'll maybe see some isolated power outages across New England because of that, and some heavy rain at least through Saturday in some spots. So upwards of 1 inch to 2 inches across parts of the South. So heads up for folks there. Not quite as much, but still a good soaking for folks across the Northeast as we get through the next couple of days as well. And this is something that I really want you to be focused on here as we get into the later parts of the day today. So your afternoon and tonight, this is the spot anywhere from Wichita to Lubbock, Amarillo included in that, Oklahoma City. We've got the potential to see some stronger storms. All the threats are on the table. We'll see a couple of tornadoes possible as well as the hail and wind. And that expands for tomorrow. This is a look at your Friday, finishing out our work week. 39 million people have the potential to see some of those strong storms. We're getting to that part of the season. So it's anywhere from the Great Lakes stretching down to the south, Dallas, Springfield, St. Louis, Chicago, a bunch of major cities included in that, Savannah. So that's how we'll wrap up our work week. Lots of things, it's that part of the season where we're kind of transitioning. So we've got some warm, we've got some cold, and it's popping up some of those storms.
Rain, so much rain.
I know.
This morning I'm like,
we
great.
need it. We need it.
I didn't bring an umbrella, but I am wearing my rain jacket.
Okay, good. You listened yesterday.
There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, new developments in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Lawmakers voting to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi over the Justice Department's handling of the case. We'll bring you an update from Washington. Up first, though, after the break, the U.S. and Ecuador joining forces in a major crime crackdown. We'll be right back. We are back with a look at a new joint effort to fight global organized crime. On Tuesday, the U.S. and Ecuador joined forces in a classified operation to combat illegal mining and drug trafficking in the South American country. Ecuador's president announced earlier this week that his government is starting joint operations with some of its allies to protect its citizens and try to put an end to violence in the country. NBC News correspondent George Solis is following the developments, and he joins us with more. George, good morning. So what are U.S. and Ecuadorian officials saying about this joint operation? What do we know?
Hey, good morning, Savannah. Well, frankly, not much. Both U.S. forces and Ecuadorian forces and their governments remaining relatively quiet about what exactly transpired here. As you mentioned, this was a joint operation, saying some of the details here were classified, although, as you did know and point out there in the opening, U.S. Southern Command did put out some videos detailing a bit of this operation. And we know, based on some of their intel, that this was a quote, designated terrorist organizations that they were targeting here in the country. Now, based on some of the information we've gathered, this would be, if the U.S. forces were on the ground, the first that has been carried out on the ground. As usual, most of these attacks or operations are carried out on the water in the Caribbean. We've seen the government interfere and take down some of those drug trafficking boats or accused drug trafficking boats. But if U.S. forces were in fact on the ground, this would be an inaugural event in some respects, Savannah.
And George, on a related topic, since September, the U.S. has carried out more than 40 lethal strikes on boats the Trump administration says are carrying drugs and narco-terrorists. I'm sure our viewers remember that. There's been little evidence really about how we're getting that information or to really back that up. But Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is set to host the inaugural America's Counter Cartel Conference in Florida today. What can you tell us about this event?
That's right, Savannah, and that's actually just a few miles from here. Expected to brief a number of officials about this operation, about Southern Command, UN Central Command, and how they all come together at the table here to combat narco-terrorism, in their words. I mean, earlier this month, we had the operation in Mexico that took out a cartel leader, El Mencho, which is sure to be discussed here. From Doral, the defense secretary, is also expected to visit the other command center in Tampa, Florida. And again, so you have all of these players here at the table, as the Trump administration has already made it very clear, and ramp up operations to target, in their words, some of the worst of the worst, some of the narco terrorists and drug traffickers that, in their words, have been supplying this country and others with drugs. Savannah.
Right. George Solis, thank you so much. Well, in a surprising act of bipartisanship in Washington, the Republican-led House Oversight Committee voted yesterday to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify on the Department of Justice's handling of records related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. 5 Republicans joined Democrats in that vote. It comes as the DOJ acknowledged that tens of thousands of Epstein files are offline, they say, as it works through redactions and privacy issues that the department says they hope to address by the end of this week. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now from Washington with more. Ryan, always great to see you. So Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace is actually the one that brought this motion before the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday, and she told reporters she's committed to delivering justice for Epstein survivors. Let's listen to what she said.
This was going to go down as one of the greatest cover-ups in American history, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to get to the bottom of it.
Ryan, what does the House Oversight Committee want to learn from Bondi, and how would you expect this testimony maybe to differ from that contentious House Judiciary hearing last month? Our viewers might remember some sound from that.
Yeah. Overall, Savannah, members of Congress are frustrated that the Department of Justice has not really provided an open line of communication about the release of these files. They're basically just dumping them on a website. The redactions are very inconsistent. They don't always explain why certain things are redacted, why other things are left unredacted. And there's also a lot of question about the 3 million tranche of files that they've just said they're not going to release. And so they want to bring Pam Bondi into a room. This will be a closed-door deposition, similar to the one that we saw with Bill and Hillary Clinton last week, where they ask her very specific and detailed questions about the release of this information. And they expect very direct answers, not the kind of dog and pony show that we saw in front of the Judiciary Committee a couple of weeks ago. Whether or not it turns out that way remains to be seen. The DOJ has been pretty defiant about the release of these files, and they believe that they're complying with the law.
Ryan, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche announced the release of 3 million more pages here of the Epstein files at the end of January, but he said that the DOJ was withholding roughly 3 million more documents. Why haven't they been released? What is the reasoning they are providing for that? And what do we know about what they are? What are some of these offline files?
That's what members of Congress want to know, Savannah. They're asking that same exact question. Now, within the Epstein Transparency Act, there are provisions for protecting the identities of victims to not interfere with ongoing investigations. But members of Congress believe that that loophole, if you will, is very narrow and that it has to reach a very high standard to be prevented from being put out to the public. So the idea that there's some 3 million documents that have not been released without any real explanation what's in those documents, in addition to the fact that many of the documents that were released are riddled with redactions. There are entire pages that are completely blacked out. Members of Congress think that's just not enough, and they want the DOJ to explain.
All right, Ryan Nobles, thank you so much. Well, coming up, continuing coverage on the war with Iran as the U.S. intensifies its attacks. Our Richard Engel joins us next. Plus, the conflict shutting down airspace and leaving thousands of Americans stranded overseas. We will talk to one person as she tries to make her way back home. You're watching Morning News Now. We are back with our top story this morning. Explosions are ringing out across Iran as the U.S. and Israel pound the country for a sixth straight day. The U.S. has revealed it torpedoed an Iranian vessel in the Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka. Iran is now vowing to retaliate, saying the U.S. will bitterly regret the attack. And in further signs the war could be expanding, NBC News is learning that the U.S. has been in contact with Kurdish leaders in northern Iraq and Iran about potentially arming them to fight the Iranian regime. That is according to three people with knowledge of the discussions and an Iraqi Kurdish official. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from Tel Aviv. Richard, a lot to unpack there with you. First, just tell us the latest where you are, but also this vessel. The fact that, the manner in which it was hit with this torpedo is notable. Tell us, though, about this vessel and the type of damage that it could do to the Iranians' ability to fight.
Okay, let's start with where I am right now and what's going on in the region and what it means for people who have found themselves trapped in this region. I'm in Tel Aviv right now, and you can see behind me there are people out on the streets. Cafes are open. I am not wearing a flak jacket right now. The government has changed its guidance, and that just happened this morning, telling Israelis that they can go back to work, they can go out as long as they are near a bomb shelter, and there are many bomb shelters in this country. So there's an increasing confidence here and in many countries that Iran's ability to carry out the kind of attacks that it has been carrying out thus far is being diminished. As I mentioned, Israel's airport is reopening. Flights are starting to fly, not only in Israel, also Oman, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates. That is not a definitive list. There have been cancellations, there have been delays, but airports and land borders are starting to open up again. Travelers who felt very penned in this war zone are now going to be able to find more options. That doesn't mean it's going to be smooth, doesn't mean it's going to be without complications, but things are changing. Now, in terms of the attack on Iran, that is only intensifying. Israel and the United States are launching more strikes against Iranian missiles, more strikes against Tehran, more strikes against the leadership. And that strike on the naval ship, it wasn't the only one that was carried out. According to the Pentagon, about 20 different Iranian vessels have been destroyed just in the last week.
Richard, now I want to talk about this potential plan I just mentioned, the U.S. arming Kurdish groups in northern Iraq and Iran to fight the Iranian regime. That is significant for a few reasons. It's a plan that would involve something actually happening on the ground versus just from the air, and also is a plan that doesn't simply rely on the Iranian people and a popular revolution happening while there are still bombs dropping from the sky. What do we know about that plan at this point, and also the risks that it could pose? Give us the context here of this particular group.
Well, we know that the discussions are underway, and the risks are very obvious. The risks are that if the U.S. pursues this option and arms Kurds inside Iran and uses them as a kind of proxy force to topple the government, that you could easily see the government in Iran, the country of Iran, break apart, because Iran is a large country, 90 million people, and then there are many different language groups, ethnic groups inside the country. The Kurds are one of them. The Baluchis are another. The Azeris are another one. There are Arabs there. There are Persians. You could have an Iraq-style situation very easily happen in Iran if the U.S. does go ahead and carry out this plan. Because remember, when the U.S. went into Baghdad, the country effectively broke into three pieces, a Shia part, a Kurdish part, and a Sunni part. And very much to this day, it remains divided. So there are many risks if the U.S. goes ahead with this plan to arm one ethnic group inside Iran and use them to fight against other groups.
Something we know you'll keep a close eye on for us. Richard Engel, thank you so much. Well, as the airspace across parts of the Middle East remains shut down, many Americans are still scrambling for any way out. One of them is Sasha Hoffman. She is from Boston. She was in Dubai when the war broke out. Well, after days of flight cancellations, she ended up driving with friends overnight across the border into Oman, to an area about 280 miles southeast of Dubai, hoping to finally catch a flight home. Well, Sasha Hoffman joins me now from Oman. Sasha, thank you so much for being here. And we are just sorry about this ordeal that you have been a part of. I know you were expecting to be in Dubai for months and then find yourself stranded when the airspace is closed, and obviously in a situation you were not anticipating. What were those first few days like as you and other Americans, first, I'm assuming maybe got some type of emergency alert, you're hearing the noises of interceptions, of explosions around you, and then you realize it's not going to be easy to get out. Walk us through that time.
Yes. So as you mentioned, those first few days, it truly was, you're hearing fighter jets in the sky. You know that missiles are coming. I was in Dubai at the time, and I will say the UAE government did a great job pretty much intercepting everything. Very few things hit land. No civilians were obviously hurt at the time. And so we were getting alerts from the government saying to shelter in place, but you're hearing everything happen in the sky. I think what was most confusing was just we as the citizens in the US are getting messages that say, depart now from the U.S. government, sort of implying that this thing is about to get extremely bad very fast. And so if that's the case, how do you get out? If the airspace is completely closed for our own safety, of course, there's just not really a way out. And there wasn't clear sense of when it was going to open or what the path was. And the phone numbers that they had for the Department of State had auto messages that, were saying that they couldn't help evacuate anyone. And so there just wasn't really a plan. It was sort of the fear of God was put in you to get out immediately, and then you couldn't do anything.
Terrifying. And then this decision that y'all made to drive about 5 hours, I think, from Dubai to where you are now last night. We've been speaking with other Americans who are in similar situations across the Middle East, and that was actually something that someone raised to us, like, do I get in the car and start driving? But is it safe to be on the roads? What will happen when I reach another international border? Tell us about kind of figuring out how to even do this and what that journey was like.
Yes, so they're starting to open up more flights within the Emirates. Etihad today took off a lot of flights. They're going to be opening more out of DXB Airport as well. Part of the reason we chose to drive was that all of our flights all kept getting canceled for 3 days in a row. And so we chose to make the decision to drive. We did it late last night. We went towards Al Ain and then into the border of Oman. I will say the entire journey took 5 hours. The border was extremely fast. We felt safe the entire time. And when we got to Oman, we felt very safe since we got here. We have not seen or heard of any fighter jets. There's just not much going on in certain parts here that are feeling honestly relatively safe. And Oman Air has added a ton of flights, meaning you truly can get out of here. And in terms of how to actually do this, there's a lot of shuttle and transport companies out of the UAE offering the one-way service to help get you across the border. We paid for someone who also did the expedited visa, and that helped a lot.
I'm assuming this has not been a cheap process. You're unexpectedly staying in hotels and paying for processes like you just mentioned.
Yep, that's correct. We went and spent about 5,000 dirham, which is somewhere around $1,400 in order to get across the border. Split that obviously amongst three of us to just get a car. Then once we got here, all of the prices have a huge surge in premium. And so we're spending over $1,000 a night for us to stay somewhere. And so, yes, there's a price premium associated with all of this. Thankfully, we could afford coming here, but I'm not sure that everyone can who's stuck in the UAE. But there are free shuttles now being offered as well, directly from Sharjah into the Muscat airport. And there are other busing options starting to get added.
I understand, and our viewers may have just seen the video of you sort of hopping down the hallway. I understand you've been dealing with a sprained ankle throughout all of this as well. We're sorry about that. Just very quickly, when are you supposed to get out now?
So I can get out tomorrow. I was waiting an extra day, frankly, even for my own ankle. I came with over 200 pounds of luggage because I was here for a few months. And so personally, I just was like, it's a little difficult to travel hopping on one leg with so much luggage. But I did feel safe enough to be here for a day. When I got here, I felt safe. And so I decided it's fine to leave tomorrow.
All right, Sasha Hoffman, thank you for joining us. We hope your ankle gets better quickly and just that you make this safe journey home. A lot of good information, though, for other Americans who may be in a similar situation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, businesses one step closer to getting refunds after the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's tariffs. We will have the latest in our Money Minute. That is next on Morning News Now. We're back now with a look at how the war in Iran is impacting other nations around the world. In China, the most important political event of the year. This is the annual gathering of the National People's Congress. It's underway, and this event is usually tightly scripted and choreographed, but this year, of course, takes place against a different backdrop and also new economic uncertainty. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frere was inside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing during the meeting. She joins us now from there with more. Janice, thank you so much for being with us. I know one of the top headlines so far out of this meeting is that China is setting its lowest GDP growth target in decades. What is behind that decision?
Well, in the speech or work report that was delivered by the premier, the government announced a slightly lower GDP target for the year of 4.5 to 5%. It was 5% last year. And it's not that it changes much from year to year, but this is the lowest target since the early 90s. And it's confirmation that China's growth is slower. This is not a surprise, and in many ways, it's not a panic. The target is closely watched by financial markets as a sign of where the economy is heading and what the government's plan is. Defense spending was also increased by 7%. And what Beijing wants out of this is stability. The lower target is an acknowledgement that the party sees domestic challenges like youth unemployment, so it can balance other factors like a trade truce with the U.S. and tariffs. And not everyone takes these numbers at face value, I should say that. There are some experts who think that last year's actual economic growth was about half of what the official stats said. Savannah.
Janice, China is the world's largest importer of gas and oil. It's obviously a huge conversation that we're having right now, given the situation in Iran and its geographic location next to that Strait of Hormuz, where so much of the world's oil passes through. How is this war impacting the country's fuel supplies?
Well, 1/3 of China's supply of crude oil is coming from Gulf countries through the Strait of Hormuz. It buys nearly all of Iran's oil exports. It's about 13% of China's supply. It has built up significant reserves to offset any immediate price or supply shocks, but it's still unclear to what extent an energy crisis could hobble China's economic growth. The size of China's reserves is a secret, but an analyst I spoke to here figures that China has roughly 3 months of stockpiles, and there's oil in transit that can last another 4 to 5 months, according to firms that are tracking the data. The bigger headache for Beijing here is control of the shipping lanes. The Strait of Hormuz is considered the world's single most critical energy choke point. If China faces supply constraints, it's likely to seek alternatives, with Russian oil as the most likely option. Savannah.
All right, Janice, thank you so much. Well, back here in the U.S., a federal judge is ordering the White House to pay up for tariff refunds. We have NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch here with our Money Minute. Hamley, good morning.
Good morning. That's right. A judge on the Court of International Trade is saying the government needs to begin refunding importers for tariffs the Supreme Court ruled were collected illegally, potentially affecting more than 300,000 importers. The Supreme Court did not provide guidance for issuing refunds, causing chaos regarding how businesses will be reimbursed. The payments could total more than $130 billion, and Customs and Border Protection has not yet responded to our request for comment. And according to multiple reports, Morgan Stanley is cutting 3% of its workforce, about 2,500 employees. The layoffs reportedly started last week. Morgan Stanley joins a growing list of financial institutions reshaping their workforces despite strong financial results. We've reached out and have yet to hear back. Meanwhile, in New York, a major court ruling could keep the city's congestion toll in place. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's attempt to halt the congestion pricing program. The judge ruled the Department of Transportation lacked authority to rescind approval of the roughly $9 fee. The toll, which charges most vehicles entering Manhattan south of Central Park, is designed to cut traffic and fund mass transit. The DOT now says it's reviewing its legal options. Now, Savannah, this has been a program that's been very controversial. Of course, it's kind of like pick your own poison of crazy New York City traffic, but also another pretty big cost for people here in New York City, in a city that's already so expensive.
Definitely. All right, Emily, thanks. Good morning, and thank you for starting your Thursday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. Right now on Morning News Now, the latest from the Middle East. Extraordinary footage of what the U.S. military says is a rare torpedo strike on an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka. It comes as America steps up attacks on Iran's capital, Tehran, while the Trump administration celebrates a major victory in our nation's capital. Overnight, Congress opting not to restrict President Trump's wartime powers, even though new NBC News polling shows an overwhelming majority of voters disapprove of how the conflict is playing out. We've got team coverage from across the globe this morning, including our conversation with one U.S. citizen stranded in Qatar as the White House faces searing backlash over its plan to get Americans to safety. Plus, how sweet it isn't, a bold new strategy for HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nationwide push to make America healthy again. Why some of your favorite sips from spots like Dunkin' and Starbucks could soon be on the federal chopping block. And later in the hour, they are leaner, meaner, smaller. We are bringing you up to speed with the big changes coming to the Formula One grid this season as the world's top teams in racing converge in Australia. Thank you again for being with us this morning. We're, of course, going to begin this hour with the intensifying war in Iran. The U.S. is projecting confidence this morning as the war nears its one-week mark. During a press conference yesterday, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said the U.S. and Israel are nearing complete control of Iranian airspace. This comes as we are learning more about an attack at sea. This video we're showing you right now on your screen, this is the moment the U.S. military says it torpedoed an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean. A crew of 180 people were believed to be on board. Well, the ship is among 20 vessels the U.S. military says it has struck during this conflict. Secretary Hegseth also said the U.S., quote, can't stop everything that Iran fires as it escalates its retaliatory strikes across the Persian Gulf. Oil facilities and U.S. sites, including embassies, have been targeted. NBC News chief international correspondent Richard Engel is in Tel Aviv with the very latest for us. Richard, good morning.
Here in Israel, the government has eased restrictions, telling people they can go back to work, they can go to cafes as long as they are near a bomb shelter. And there are bomb shelters all over this country. As airports are now starting to open up all across the region, it is a sign that there is a growing confidence that Iran's ability to carry out the kinds of attacks it has been using so far has been diminished.
The Israeli military this morning released new images of its fighter jets streaming toward Iran as this war continues to escalate and spread. Israel and the U.S. are targeting all parts of the Iranian military, its leadership and internal security forces. This is Periscope video. Nothing like it has been seen for decades from a U.S. submarine destroying an Iranian Navy ship. The first time the U.S. has used a torpedo to sink an enemy vessel since World War II. The Iranian ship can be seen going vertical as it slips underwater. The Sri Lankan Navy recovered 87 bodies of Iranian crew members and 32 survivors from the Indian Ocean. President Trump giving his assessment of the war.
Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15.
In Lebanon, Hezbollah, a pro-Iranian militia, has joined the fight, firing rockets at Israel. Israel responding with devastating attacks on Beirut and southern Lebanon, and sending in Israeli ground forces, displacing more than 80,000 Lebanese from their homes so far, according to the government. Iran's strategy is to spread the war and make it costly. Turkey, a NATO country, says it too was attacked by Iran. NATO air defenses shooting down an Iranian missile. Less than 1 week in, and already at least 15 countries have seen strikes against their territory, from the Mediterranean to southern Europe to the Persian Gulf. And the Trump administration says the most intense phase hasn't even started yet.
We are just getting started.
And casualties are mounting At least 6 Americans dead, and in Iran, a memorial of bloody backpacks and charred notebooks from an elementary school where the local mayor says 168 people were killed. It remains unclear who carried out the strike.
The Iranian Red Crescent says roughly 1,000 Iranians have been killed so far.
All right, Richard, thank you very much. Well, thousands of Americans remain stranded in the Middle East as Iran launches retaliatory drone strikes on U.S. facilities across the region. The State Department issued advisories and evacuation orders days after the U.S. and Israel launched its initial attacks. But the Trump administration is now facing backlash from lawmakers and officials who say the administration failed to plan for this predictable situation. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now from Dubai with the details here. Keir, good morning.
Hey there, good morning to you. And we're just hearing this morning that they have been evacuating residents around the U.S. Embassy in the capital of Qatar, Doha. That was after a tense conversation between the Prime Minister of Qatar and the Foreign Minister of Iran. And now, this morning, another barrage against Qatar and other countries in this region, including here in the UAE, where they say just today now they have faced 6 missiles and 131 drones, with Americans caught in the middle.
The 6th day of war and another wave of strikes hitting this region this morning. Americans trying to flee the conflict by any means necessary.
Do we stay put, or do we try to do a land border crossing?
The State Department saying overnight the first charter flights are starting to take off amid a widespread airspace lockdown.
There is some commercial flights that are taking off intermittently from these countries, and we plan to get Americans on board as quickly as possible.
To get a seat on a flight, Americans are told to call a hotline. But these twins from New Jersey say it's frustrating.
We've tried calling the embassy, we've tried calling the U.S. government, but how can we get out if no one's helping us get out?
What do you think of that?
We're American citizens, and we would expect America to help us.
Their family are in a hotel close to the U.S. consulate in Dubai, hit by a drone Tuesday.
I never thought in my life that I would be in a war zone.
The U.S. says it's working to get everyone out and even using space on military planes along with the charters. But for those flying commercial, airports are busy. Cody Green sharing his anxious journey, desperate to get back to Tampa for his son's first birthday.
Dubai International Airport, it's a little crazy.
After multiple cancelled flights.
Well, we made it through. Security and customs delayed an hour and a half, 2 hours, as we're heading home.
We caught up with him as he packed to leave. He too says he's got no government help.
So I think it's disgusting.
Are you anxious flying through all this?
A little part of me is, yeah, just how insecure the area kind of is with all the stuff flying through the place.
And this morning, Savannah, the State Department saying that it is surging, it says, extra flights into this region, and that 17,500 Americans have been able to leave the Middle East. As for Cody, you saw there, he's trying to get back to his son Reese's first birthday party. We spoke to him just as he was boarding that flight. Looks like he's going to make it, Savannah.
Oh, all right, that's some good news there. Keir, thank you so much. Well, let's bring in Oliver Sims. He's in this very situation, an American currently stranded in Doha, Qatar, and someone we spoke with just a few days ago. Oliver, good morning. Thank you so much for coming back with us. We're glad you're safe. We appreciate you letting us check in with you. So on Monday, for anybody who missed this, just kind of what's happened to you here, you told us that you were actually heading home from a wedding in India. All you had here was a connecting flight through Doha. You were not actually even meant to spend much time there. You made it off the ground while you were in the air. Strikes began. Your plane has turned back around, and you have been stuck since then, sheltering in your hotel. Tell us, since we've spoken to you on Monday, what have you seen? What have you heard?
Yeah, I've heard many more explosions, and actually 4 hours ago, there were several loud booms outside that I could hear, and, they even upgraded the security threat for us. They sent us an emergency alert on all of our phones to upgrade the security threat, and it's been really scary. They have since reduced that back down, but I've heard those booms, but there have been some times when it's been very peace and quiet and very calm, but other times it's very scary.
Have you received any communication from the government or in any way been able to make it known that you are there and you are stranded?
I've definitely made it known that I am here and I am stranded. After many phone call attempts, I've finally gotten through. They said that, as long as I'm registered with the STEP program, and also I did fill out the crisis intake form that was just released. So they definitely know that I'm here, and now I just have to wait on the government.
What about from your airline? What's the latest in terms of being able to book a flight, thinking you may know when it could happen, dealing with cancellations? What do you know in that regard?
Yeah, so I flew here on Qatar Airways, and so according to them, the airspace will be closed up until March 7th, but they have begun doing some limited flights to certain destinations in Europe out of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and also in Oman, and if that goes well, then they will definitely expand those flights to other cities.
The other day when we were speaking, you mentioned to me that you had thought, should I get in a car and drive somewhere else? How are you feeling about that possibility now?
Definitely on my radar for sure. I actually have a friend who lives here in Doha. He actually just left earlier this morning to go to Riyadh. He doesn't have a flight out of there, but he just figured, it'd be better for him to get out. But I have also been talking to some other passengers who are on my flight and other flights as well, and we've been banding together, and we are thinking about doing that if we can't get on any of these other limited flights that Qatar has.
Yeah, we just spoke with an American who had done the drive from Dubai over to Oman and believes she's going to be able to get out now. Oliver, you just mentioned a few moments ago that you've heard kind of intensifying explosions over the last day. Those security levels have been raised. What kind of guidance are you receiving, and who is it coming from? Is your hotel communicating anything about how to stay safe? Are you getting alerts? What has that process been like, and do you feel like you know what's going on in a way that makes you feel safe considering the circumstances?
Yeah, so I've actually been getting guidance from two different sources. One would technically be the U.S. government with the STEP program, since they've been sending out daily emails on what to do and how to shelter in place. And the other would be from the Qatari government here, since they are sending out the emergency alerts on our phones that are detailing, how to stay safe and what we should do. But in regards to that, I do feel relatively safe given the circumstances and given the basically the things that I should adhere to on how to stay safe. So yes.
What is that guidance, Oliver? What are they telling you about how to stay safe?
Yeah, they're basically telling us to just, shelter in place, get away from windows, make sure that I have food and water supply with me, make sure I have a go bag, which I do have a go bag with me ready to go just in case anything really dire happens. Just mainly things like that.
Oliver Sims, we have been thinking about you since we spoke with you on Monday. We will keep checking, and we really appreciate you talking with us again. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Well, President Trump is doubling down on defending his decision to launch strikes against Iran this week. This comes as a new NBC News poll shows that a majority of voters disapprove of his handling of the war. Our NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake has more on this from Washington for us. Hey, Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Yeah, look, Americans are watching this war play out in real time, and our polling shows a nation divided over what we're seeing. A slim majority of voters say they disapprove of the president's handling of Iran as the Washington debate over the war heats up and as its human costs hit home.
President Trump again defending his decision to strike Iran.
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly.
Arguing Iran would have developed a nuclear weapon if he hadn't.
When crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen.
This as we're learning more about the lead up to his decision. A senior U.S. official confirming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called President Trump last Monday, telling him Iran's supreme leader and his top advisors would be meeting in Tehran on Saturday and would be vulnerable to a single strike.
How important was that information in the president making the decision to strike where and when he did?
I think it was important with respect to the timeline, but I think the president, prior to that phone call, had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States assets and our personnel in the region.
On Thursday, the U.S. team negotiating with Iran told the president that in their view, a real deal on Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs would be impossible to reach. On Friday, the president ordered the strikes to begin. Democrats on Capitol Hill have been pushing back, trying to block Trump's ability to fight the war without congressional approval. Republicans defeating that effort overnight. while tensions have been rising. This man protesting the war arrested by Capitol Police yesterday. Republican Senator Tim Sheehy joining the effort to remove the man, who says he is a veteran. While NBC News polling shows a majority of voters disapprove of the president's handling of the situation in Iran, Republicans and the White House staying the course.
Does the president believe the country supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran?
I think he does. This is a rogue terrorist regime.
As the 6 American service members killed by an Iranian drone in Kuwait are mourned among the fallen. 20-year-old Sergeant Declan Cody's uncle, remembering him as exceptionally bright.
Started remembering him. There was just something beautiful about him, something amazing, something very intelligent about him.
In one other notable exchange yesterday, the White House press secretary was asked about the possibility of U.S. combat troops going into Iran at some point. She said that such a move is not part of the White House's current plan, but that the president won't take any options off the table as the conflict there develops. Savannah?
Thank you very much. Let's continue this conversation with Aaron David Miller. He is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, good morning. Thank you very much for giving us your time this morning. Let's talk about the inception of this war, because we've gotten lots of pieces of information that create sort of this confusing mosaic. I think, obviously, to begin, it goes without saying that this has been a potential, and obviously the United States, along with quite a bit of the rest of the world, has had this concern about Iran, about their nuclear program, about their regime, and we've obviously seen the Iranian people themselves take to the streets in a historic way just months ago over this regime. But in terms of how this actually started, we've gotten these mixed messages between Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying earlier this week that this was because Israel was going to attack, the president denying that, saying that they felt they knew Iran was going to attack, and now this piece of information that the Israeli prime minister shared the intelligence with President Trump that Iran's leadership would be together and would be vulnerable to an attack. How do you interpret all this? And I think also for our viewers, why is it important to try to understand this particular detail?
Yeah, let's start with that question. Thanks for having me. Look, when America acts, I worked for every administration from Jimmy Carter to Bush 43, but you could throw in Obama and Biden as well here. When America acts, and certainly acts on a scale of this magnitude, it needs to ask itself a series of questions. The administration, the president does. Not only can we do it, but should we do it? What are the objectives and the metrics for success? And I think what you've seen here over since early January is a sort of escalating triggers. You had the president go where none of his Republican or Democratic predecessors have ever gone, encouraging Iranian protesters, basically saying, help is on the way, seize your institutions, we're going to hit them hard. That was then followed by the largest deployment of American missile and naval assets since 2003. Negotiations that the administrations knew, in my judgment, could never succeed. But I think the key to this, frankly, was the president's realization when Benjamin Netanyahu called him and said, we have really good intel that on Saturday morning, there'll be a large collection of Iranian officials, including the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, that the president, as in June, when he struck Iranian nuclear sites, the first American president to do so, saw a piece of history here in his own mind. And since I think we were drifting toward military action against Iran anyway, for the reasons I've identified, I think he just made a necessity or a virtue out of necessity and struck. And, you know, a bad man, Ali Khamenei, a horrible regime, but the critical variables that Iran presented, an immediate threat, what Oliver Wendell Holmes referred to in a domestic context as a clear and present danger? No. And that's why I think it's going to be extremely difficult to get out of this with a set of metrics that will tell the American people and convince them not only was this necessary, but we have succeeded in a way normal humans like you and I would believe we've actually succeeded.
Aaron, you mentioned, rewind to prior to all this happening a week ago, that there were conversations going on. We're supposed to be a negotiation. We know that has been historically difficult with a regime like this one, but it was happening nonetheless. And you've co-written an article for Foreign Policy criticizing the president's top negotiators, Steve Witkoff, son-in-law Jared Kushner. There's the title right there. I mean, it says it all. Witkoff and Kushner get an F in diplomacy, according to you. Why do you believe that they failed in these talks with Iran?
Well, you remember, they're not presiding over three of the most consequential negotiations in the international system today: Russia and Ukraine failing, Israel, Palestine, and Gaza, implementation of the first phase, no chance right now, particularly in view of what's happened in Iran, to begin to implement phases 2 and 3. And look, negotiating with the Iranians is extremely difficult. They have demands, core demands. I don't think there ever, frankly, was a balance of interest to be struck between Iranian negotiators and Americans. When you assign your best friend and your son-in-law to basically manage 3 sets of negotiations without a sense of strategy, with no sense of process, with the kinds of teams that are actually necessary to do the technical work and to think this stuff through, you can't do it on the back of a cocktail napkin. And I'm afraid if war is the ultimate result, in many respects, of a failed negotiation, that's in part what we have.
All right. Aaron David Miller, we really appreciate your perspective this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ray.
Time to get you some weather now. Severe storms are expected in the forecast from Texas all the way up to Wisconsin. Let's take a closer look at your forecast. Angie Lastman's back. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. We are indeed looking for the potential for some strong storms today and also some soggy conditions for other folks. 9 million people already under these flood alerts. You can see places like Cincinnati and Indianapolis included in that as some heavy rain works across this region. It's parts of the Northeast, the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes that are in and out of the rain through the day today. We'll see this heavy rain kind of creating a bit of difficulty on the roads, not to mention we've got a colder side of this system, and that leaves us with some icing and, you guessed it, some slippery spots across parts of New England as the day goes on. We've also got another kind of day of unsettled weather here. As we look to tomorrow, we'll see the potential for some of these showers and some icing to kind of linger across parts of the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and then parts of the Midwest as well. And not to mention, we've got the chance for severe weather and widespread severe weather for tomorrow, and we'll keep our weekend unsettled as well in some of these spots. So let's start with the cold part of this. We've got the icing I mentioned, the slick roads, the power outages, all possible here as we get into the afternoon hours for folks across the New England area. And then heavy rain is expected, and we'll see the heaviest of it kind of through the weekend across parts of the South. Now, one thing that I want you to note for the second half of today, we've got the potential for severe weather. This is this afternoon and into this evening from Texas, stretching into Kansas. All the threats are on the table. And on top of that, this is a much bigger area that we're going to have to watch for tomorrow with the potential for severe weather. Once again, all the threats on the table. We'll see some tornadoes, likely Savannah, the wind gusts, the hail, all possible. Kansas City down through Oklahoma City included in that. So much to watch as we wrap up our work week.
All right. Angie, thank you so much. Good info there to stay safe. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the Trump administration reportedly souring on the sweets. White House Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now looking to crack down on sugar in some of your favorite dine-out drinks. First, though, after the break, continuing coverage of America's and Israel's war with Iran. Could the White House soon tap outside military help from Kurdish forces? And what does that look like? We're going to dig into that next. We are back now with a closer look at the U.S. military operation in the Middle East as the U.S. seeks new ways to put pressure on Iran. An Iraqi Kurdish official and 3 other people familiar with this matter told NBC News the Trump administration officials are talking to Kurdish leaders in North Iraq and northwestern Iran about potentially arming Kurdish groups to help topple the Iranian regime. We are joined now by NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren for more on this. Colonel, you have been with us throughout this, and we so appreciate your time and your expertise lending us that coming here on set. Okay, let's start right there. To me, what is significant about this is it's the first time we are hearing about a potential for something that is on the ground, not U.S. boots on the ground, but a plan that is not simply from the air and is also not solely calling on the Iranian people, on civilians, to take to the streets. What do you make of this as a potential?
Right. The Kurds moving into Iran or beginning to create some energy in this corner of Iran is a good thing for the United States operational planning. And here's why. Because if the Kurds begin to move through their portion of the country, it's going to cause the Iranians to have to reallocate resources to deal with that. So it may take some of the pressure off of Tehran, the organic protesters and the citizens who live in Tehran who want to see change. Some of the Basij and other sort of internal security forces may have to go deal with the Kurds.
And is there a concern there of essentially arming, maybe not necessarily aligning, but at least working with one ethnic group in a country at a critical moment like this for the future of this country?
Well, that's the flip side of this coin, right? So while the Kurds may help us in our current operational objective, which is to generate the conditions that may lead to regime change, what we don't know is what happens next. So, in the past, historically, when we've armed groups and allowed and had them work for us, when that operation is complete, we never know what's going to happen next. And I point, of course, to, Afghanistan in the 80s as the most striking example.
Exactly. On our screen right now, viewers are seeing this video of this torpedo strike that sunk this ship. Our Richard Engel pointed out it's notable just that we are watching a video of this nature from a periscope because this has not been used since World War II. Just walk us through the significance of something like that, just because it is notable that it is a rarity.
Dramatic video. The reason it's rare, of course, is because in the conflicts that the United States have been involved in since World War II, frankly, none of our opponents have had a Navy that can match our own. So that is why, frankly, it's such a rarity. It's because there's been nobody out there who we had to shoot a torpedo at, just to be quite simple about it. But it's fascinating to watch, and it reminds us, it's almost a little bit nostalgic. But let me tell you a little bit about this torpedo. This Mark 48 torpedo designed during the Cold War to sink Russian or Soviet nuclear missile submarines and high-performance surface vessels. That's what it's for. It weighs about 3,000 pounds. It's 20 feet long, and it can shoot about 25 miles. So it's an extraordinary weapon system, and here you can see it being used to amazing effect.
On the other end of something with any type of nostalgia, modern warfare, and this one really being dominated by drones. Walk us through that weaponry.
Well, that's where the future of warfare is, quite frankly, is in drones. And we've seen both the Iranians and the Americans use drones to great outcome, right? And the Iranians in particular have thousands and thousands of these very low-cost, high-quantity drones that they have been using, against both U.S. and Gulf nations. In fact, all of the American casualties that we've seen thus far have been caused by drones. So it's the largest casualty producer on the battlefield today. Wow. And that's something to keep an eye on.
Colonel Steve Warren, thank you. We really appreciate you being here. Coming up, continuing coverage of the escalating war with Iran. After the break, wartime sentiment from across the globe, how Americans and Iranians abroad are feeling about the violence. That is next. We are back with our top story. The United States and Israel are launching fresh strikes on Iran as the war enters its sixth day. And this morning, we're getting new details about the Iranian vessel that was sunk. That's what you're seeing on your screen. It was by a U.S. torpedo off the coast of Sri Lanka. We also have new details about the fate of the crew on board. It's an attack Iranian officials say the U.S. will bitterly regret. All this is as Israel intensifies its attacks on Lebanon by air and ground as part of its fight against Iran-backed Hezbollah. The Lebanese government says more than 80,000 people have now been displaced from their homes. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv. Matt, let's start with this Iranian ship that was sunk by that American torpedo. What do we know at this point about the attack? And also, I mentioned we know about the fate of the crew on board.
Yeah, I mean, this was an attack that we had heard from Pete Hegseth was the first time an American submarine has fired a torpedo, not just sunk a ship with a torpedo, but fired one ever since World War II. So it is historically a curiosity for sure. And as we're seeing, this looks like Pathé News Service from World War II, these images, black and white, showing that torpedo being fired. We didn't hear much in terms of details from Pete Hegseth, and we don't know the fate of the crew. But this is one of really what the administration is saying are hundreds of naval victories that they've had ever since this offensive began on Saturday. Whether or not this actually means that we're going to continue to see naval victory after naval victory, I think that the real issue here is not in dismantling Iran's military forces, particularly their conventional military forces. As the administration has said, and we can take it at face value, this has been a resounding tactical success from the beginning. The question now isn't so much the tactics, but the strategy that goes in after the fighting is over.
Matt, we mentioned the situation in Lebanon is worsening by the day. What is the latest on Israel's air and ground offensive, and what is the latest on Hezbollah striking or attempting to strike Israel?
Yeah, we've continued to see Hezbollah striking northern targets in Israel that they say are strategic. Almost all of them have been swatted out of the sky, and so far, in a very revealing move, the Israeli government has yet to announce an evacuation of all of northern Israel, which is what they did following Hezbollah strikes on northern Israel after those October 7th attacks about a year and a half ago. So far, all of the residents are remaining in the north of Israel, and the Israelis have announced an expanded ground operation demanding the evacuation of civilians, all of them, south of the Litani River, which is a crucial river when it comes to delineating ceasefires between the Israelis and the Lebanese and Hezbollah. It is a boundary that basically marks southern Lebanon. But the Israelis have also demanded that people evacuate not just that Dahia neighborhood in southern Beirut, which is the stronghold of Hezbollah, but also several Shiite majority neighborhoods around Dahia. So we're talking about a huge call up demanding evacuations as the Israelis say they are planning to wreak fury on Hezbollah.
Matt, finally, I want to talk about where you are. Earlier in the show, you said the situation in Israel had calmed a little. Obviously, yesterday when we were coming to, there were sirens going off. You had to evacuate, but now it seems calmer, and to the point where, as you told us earlier, the airport is reopening. What could that mean for Americans hoping to flee?
Yeah, I think that most Americans who are hoping to flee maybe have relaxed a little bit by now and might not have the same urgency behind them, especially since we're starting to see these airports opening up. Most of the flights right now, I think all of the flights right now, if I'm not mistaken, are incoming flights. The big issue for Israelis, the real preoccupation, isn't those Americans and other foreigners who are trying to flee, but getting Israelis who are outside of Israel home. That has been a major issue. All these really thousands of Israelis who are stuck, and now El Al, the state carrier, has been promising that they're going to be sending in flights, many of which are going to be free of charge from destinations throughout the world. Most El Al major hubs are going to be flying people back. It's going to be a gradual process, but this really does speak volumes about how Israelis have seen this. I can say now, unlike the last time I spoke with you, that it really has been just about 24 hours since we've seen any casualty, any death, or any injury from incoming Iranian or Hezbollah missiles here in Israel.
Matt Bradley, thank you so much, and stay safe. Now, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster. Shaquille is in Western Michigan. He is talking with people about how they feel about the war, giving us a little bit of insight about what these conversations are like around the country. Shaq, first, if you could just give us context about exactly where you are. I know you're in a county near Kalamazoo, just to discuss its political makeup in a battleground state. It's always an interesting one. It went 53 to 45% in favor of President Trump in the 2024 presidential election. What's it like there right now, first?
Well, Savannah, we're back in Chicago right now, but we spent the day in Berrien County. It's a small county, relatively small when you look at the state of Michigan. It borders the state of Indiana. It's along the coast of Lake Michigan. But really the reason we were there is because we wanted to talk to voters, conservative-leaning voters, in what is going to be a crucial swing state when you look at the midterm elections. They not only have an open Senate race, an open governor's race, but there are key congressional battles, congressional districts that are considered toss-ups. So this is going to be an area, these are going to be the type of voters that Democrats are going to be targeting in November, and we wanted to hear from them directly, Savannah.
Shaq, an important thing to do, and let's just first start, what are they saying about the war? Was there an overall consensus? Does it feel split?
It's interesting because when you look at NBC News polling, you have that poll that said about 54% of Americans disapprove of how President Trump is handling the situation in Iran. But when you talk to voters, you hear a little bit more nuance there. Listen to some of those conversations.
I feel like he had to do something like this to bring peace into the Middle East. And unfortunately, this is part of the process.
I don't support how he's handling it, but with the country being now in this position, I have to support we do everything we can to protect ourselves.
I'm in favor of anything the president does because I support the president.
That is someone who clearly has supported the president throughout. I will say that Democrats, you hear from them, they are strongly opposed to what they're seeing in Iran. They say they don't trust the information coming from the administration, and they want to see this end. So you see definitely a split there. But when you listen to some of those conversations, just because someone may be concerned about what they're seeing in Iran doesn't necessarily mean they're shifting completely away from President Trump.
All right, Shaq, thank you so much. Well, for Iranians living around the world, the war has proved divisive, sparking conflicting feelings. Some are celebrating efforts to bring down the Iranian regime. Others are fearful for their loved ones and the turmoil that might come next, saying it could, of course, have a major destabilizing effect on the country, one we're to an extent already seeing. Caroline Modaresi-Tehrani joins us now for more on all this. She's a British-Iranian journalist who's been covering humanitarian, political, and social issues in Iran for the last 15 years, so we are lucky to have her with us. Good morning. So just first, I think mixed feelings is pretty understandable here, but just tell us, do Iranians believe the U.S. and Israel are acting in a way that is in the interests of the Iranian people? What do you think is the general feeling on that point?
Thanks so much for having me, Savannah. What I will try and sort of illuminate now to everybody is what people inside Iran are thinking and feeling. So internet connectivity inside the country is severely limited. It's about 120 hours now that the internet inside the nation has been around 1%. I got in touch with one of my sources just today, and they said that they were able to text, but they were not able to go on the telephone. And telecommunications companies inside the country have sent threatening messages. This is, of course, all state-run, threatening messages warning residents inside Iran that if they connect to the internet, if they attempt to try and use the telephone, if they try and actually call and contact the outside world, there will be repercussions. We also know that there are checkpoints that have been set up throughout the cities, including Tehran, which is the capital, where people of the regime forces have shoot-to-kill orders for people who go out to take to the streets. This, of course, is a chilling effect. Now we're sort of 6 days into this war. It's a very different mood than the conversations I had with people inside the country on Saturday when this bombing campaign began by the United States and Israel. Then when I was able to speak to some people on the telephone, I have to say there were some very, very cautiously optimistic, happy Iranians that I spoke to because they finally felt like they were going to be receiving some kind of help. As you may remember, and I think your viewers will have been following this story with your coverage, in January, the Islamic Republic regime conducted a mass killing campaign, slaughtering tens of thousands of Iranians. And when I spoke to one Iranian on Saturday, she said that they were extremely shaken by this event and that people were just understandably had enough with the regime. So that's just a snippet of the mood from inside Iran that we're able to share with you today.
I think what's also difficult, right, about that situation is we've seen just in the last few months historic protests, really, that many were remarking on sort of a tonal shift, on certainly something notable in the size of these protests, which then resulted in that brutal crackdown. Now in this moment where the very regime that they were protesting against, to an extent, it's been at least taken this severe hit with the loss of the supreme leader and much of the leadership, where that is something that we are hearing and seeing some celebrations on. They're getting this message: if you go outside, you will be killed immediately. I think it means that we are not really able to, not to mention a blackout going on where it's difficult to communicate from Iran, but we are not fully able to understand the picture of of what Iranians want next, just how many of them feel a certain way, because they're not able to come out and express that.
Right. And I think that that's a really important point, Savannah. One thing I'll say is that in 2022, after the Woman Life Freedom Movement, there was some polling that was conducted via VPN by Ganam. 16,000 respondents responded to that poll. And between the ages of 20 and 29, 83% of those respondents said that they didn't want reform, they wanted the regime gone. The problem now, as you mentioned, Savannah, though, is that as this bombing campaign escalates, as targeted strikes potentially start to hit more and more civilian sites, we still don't know the exact authors of the shocking and devastating attack in Minab, that school. We know 160 elementary school children and teachers were killed. We still don't know who's responsible for that. But unfortunately, I think that as any war continues and prolongs, we're going to see mistakes like this potentially happen more and more. Whether or not that's going to have any kind of change on the mood inside Iran and people's support for any potential intervention from the West, we still don't know.
Caroline Modaresi-Tehrani, important and nuanced conversation. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for it. Coming up, could some of your favorite drinks at spots like Dunkin' and Starbucks look a little bit different soon? When Morning News Now returns, the bold new push from Health Chief Robert F. Kennedy Jr. targeting sugar in your daily routine and how those companies are reacting. That's next. Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics. This morning, a Texas Republican is facing a new ethics probe amid a high-stakes runoff campaign. NBC News senior national politics reporter John Allen is back with us with that and more. John, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. It was amazing to see you at the Olympics, but great to see you back in that chair. And no doubt that chair is better than the hot seat beneath Tony Gonzalez. He's the Texas Republican congressman who admitted Wednesday that he had an affair with one of his aides. The confession came a day after Gonzalez survived the first round of a primary challenge. And it came on the same day that the House Ethics Committee announced it would investigate him. The panel said it will look into whether Gonzalez engaged in sexual misconduct and inappropriately dispensed special favors to that staffer. The aide in question, Regina Santos Aviles, tragically later died by suicide. With the Ethics Committee hounding him and some colleagues calling on him to resign, Gonzalez will face voters again in May. That's when he sees Brandon Herrera for a second time in the primary runoff. And in another Texas runoff, President Donald Trump says he will endorse a Republican Senate candidate soon. He had stayed out of the first round, but now Trump wants to play kingmaker between John Cornyn, the sitting senator, and State Attorney General Ken Paxton. And he says the candidate who doesn't win his endorsement should drop out. Is that fair, he asked in a social media post? Doesn't matter. We must win in November, the president wrote. And on Capitol Hill, the House committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi. They want Bondi to testify about her handling of the Epstein files. At least most of them do. South Carolina Republican Nancy Mace broke GOP ranks in moving to subpoena Bondi. And she pulled in 4 more Republicans and all of the panel's Democrats to outvote the committee's GOP leadership 24-19. The Justice Department, they did not immediately respond to NBC News' request for comment. Back to you, Savannah.
All right, John, thanks for the welcome home. I appreciate it. Good to see you. We like you doing politics now. Thank you. Well, your favorite coffee order at Dunkin' or Starbucks could be in jeopardy if U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy gets his way here. He claims both companies put too much sugar in some of their products, and that makes them unsafe for people to drink. In Massachusetts, where Dunkin' was founded, the governor pushed back on Kennedy's comments, telling him in a post on X to come and take it. NBC has reached out to Dunkin' and Starbucks for comment, but has not heard back yet. Well, Kennedy's threatening to pull certain ingredients off the market if companies can't prove that they are safe. This is part of his agenda to make America healthy again, and we've seen him overhaul how foods are made in the U.S. NBC News medical reporter Dr. Akshay Syal joins us now for more on this. Dr. Syal, good morning. I kind of want to start with just let's just get some basic facts here. I mean, I do think a lot of these drinks have a lot of sugar. Now, whether it's up to Americans if they want to drink it or not is a different question. But can you just sort of tell us, what the issue is here, why these particular chains, Dunkin' and Starbucks, are being targeted, and, is there too much sugar in them?
You know, Savannah, I was a little shocked to see. I mean, sort of, you know, people really love their Duncan. Some of the backlash to his comments has been eye-opening. But you know, I think there's two separate issues here, separate but related issues, Savannah. You know, the first is yes, we are just drinking way too much sugar. We are consuming way too much sugar as a nation. The average American has about 17 extra added teaspoons of sugar every day, about 2 to 3 times
17, did
the
you
normal
say?
amount. It's 17 extra. That's a lot of sugar, Savannah. So, you know, that's one issue, and we'll come back to that. But the other one here, and I think this is sort of more broadly what Kennedy is focused on, is this loophole, Savannah, called generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. It's a decades-old sort of loophole by the FDA that allows the food manufacturers to put things into their products that, you know, they are saying is safe and is not necessarily tested by the FDA. So this can include things like, you know, syrups, corn syrups, for example, extra added starches, and other sort of emulsifiers and things that sneak into the product, and what Kennedy is ultimately coming after.
From a regulatory standpoint, what do you think about like restricting certain ingredients? Is that a realistic possibility?
Well, you know, former FDA Commissioner David Kessler has actually submitted a petition, Savannah, what's called a citizen's petition to the FDA to actually get some of this addressed. Now, the goal is really if we could move things out of the GRAS category into what's recognized as a food additive, that would allow, one, you know, the manufacturers have to prove it's safe to get it into their products, and two, theoretically, the FDA could then set limits, and that sort of comes back to the Dunkin' Donuts issue. I think he said, you know, 115 grams of sugar in his comments. You know, that could potentially limit some of that added sugar in these drinks that we're seeing.
I want to talk about the 17 thing. You said 17 extra, what was it, teaspoons? Is that totally wrong, or was that right?
No, that's right. And you
what
know,
is normal?
That added sugar,
how much are we supposed to have?
You know, I would say the less you can consume, the better. You know, I don't think any American is in danger of eating too little sugar, unless, of course, you have diabetes or other issues. That's a separate category. But you know, for most healthy people, it's hard to eat too little sugar in the American diet. You can see on your screen there, Savannah, some of the risks of excess sugar: obesity, inflammation in the body, diabetes, fatty liver, heart disease. You know, this is some of the most important advice I give my patients, Savannah. Stop drinking sugar. If you can substitute a regular soda with diet soda, if you can order your coffee without added vanilla syrup or pumpkin syrup, you know, people would be shocked at how many calories there are in these things, and it's really, really simple changes to make.
Very quickly, Dr. Sayal, I think that people, but correct me if I'm wrong, we're pretty like universally happy to see some changes when it came to food dyes, for example. Maybe not like the big companies producing it, but other than that, Americans are happy that maybe it just makes it easier for their kids to eat healthier, for example. Does this feel similar, like that this is something good to get behind?
It does, Savannah, it does. And I think the only thing I would just caveat is, you know, some of the mixed messaging around this where, you know, he was in a Fox News interview recently saying, you know, I'm not coming after your Twinkies. If you want to eat a Twinkie, you can eat a Twinkie. You should just know what's in it. So are these things going to be removed off the market, or is it more transparency around American choices? I think that's what we're all really wanting to see, where this ends up going.
Dr. Sayal, thank you so much. You blew my mind. Good to see you. Coming up, Formula One fans, it is finally that time of year again. The 2026 season is about to start in Australia, so we are bringing you back up to speed on the big changes coming to the racing grid this year. Strap in, that's up next. Start your engines, racing fans. We are ending this hour with a look at all the changes coming to the new Formula One season. We are just hours away from the start of the Australian Grand Prix weekend. Practice sessions start tonight before the race that will officially kick off the 2026 season on Saturday. And this year, F1 is introducing a number of developments to the sport. From lighter cars to new power units, there is a new generation of cars that's given drivers and fans a fresh experience on the track. For more on all this, let's bring in NBC News reporter Sahil Kapoor. Sahil, good morning. Viewers at home, you've got the two biggest NBC News F1 fans in a conversation here right now about this, and I'm excited to talk with you about it, Sahil, because, I mean, some of these changes are a pretty big deal, and they really kind of get at part of what makes F1 in a way that I think some drivers are excited about, some drivers are less excited about. Tell us what are going to have the biggest impact out there on the racetrack.
Yes, Savannah, Formula One is back, and I've never seen preseason intrigue quite like this because it's the biggest rule change in the sport's 75-year history, which will change the racing and the experience for fans. So let's take a look at some of the changes. There'll be new power units. This is the biggest one, more electrical energy that drivers control through buttons on their steering wheel, less power through their right foot on the gas. The cars will be smaller, they'll be lighter. They'll also have active aerodynamics, so you'll see more movement on the front and rear wings than we have before. And remember the buttons I mentioned, that includes overtake mode, it includes boost mode. Drivers will have to figure out when to use this energy and when to save it strategically. Then narrower tires, more sustainable fuels, part of F1's goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2030, as well as new track zones. That'll affect the aero to replace the old DRS system. How all these play out when the rubber hits the road is still TBD. We'll get our first answers tonight Eastern time, Savannah, when the cars hit the track for the first time in the first practice session ahead of the Melbourne race. I'm expecting a little bit of chaos because there's so many unknowns. And of course, we'll see a new American team on the grid, Cadillac F1, when the Andretti built cars for the first time ever. Are you excited?
I was going to ask about that. I'm very excited. I mean, that's just cool, especially as an American fan of F1. Also, I don't know how you can hear things like buttons on the steering wheel and overtake mode and boost mode and not be like, I gotta watch this. I'm so excited about it, Sahil. Tell us what we know about how the drivers are feeling about it and the difference it could mean on the track.
This is one of the biggest talking points in F1 right now. It'll absolutely change the way drivers race because of the emphasis on battery and all these new tools. Drivers will have to figure out how to deploy the power wisely and save it because, for instance, if they run out of energy on the straights, they'll be a sitting duck, get overtaken. Do they use this energy on the straights? How much do they use exiting the corners? Where do they compromise to save it later? Think of a little bit in layman's terms like Mario Kart. You have to know when to use your shell. You have to know when to use your mushrooms and your stars to maximize your chances, and you don't want to use them all right at the beginning. And this has all led to some criticism that, F1 could be taking away from the emphasis on raw one-lap pace, which a lot of hardcore fans care about. F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali told me and other reporters recently that this anxiety about rule changes is natural in F1. He's seen a lot of it, but they'll still have great racing, he said, great overtaking and challenges for drivers. And if that doesn't happen, then he said the sport can intervene and adjust the regulations. But for now, he sounds confident that they won't have to.
It's just, there's so much to watch for, Sahil. Also, you mentioned Cadillac. What I think is really cool about that, too, is seeing if that brings more American fans to the sport, something that we have seen happen since the Netflix show Drive to Survive, which I will tell our viewers, if you haven't seen, watch it so you can get into the season and feel like you know what's going on. It is like a reality TV show meets sport. You hear them talking to each other, you see the drama. I mean, I can't. Obviously, I like it, which is saying a lot for me for a sport. Sahil, thank you so much. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.